How do you say farewell to someone you've known half your life? How do you say goodbye to a longtime partner in what is by far the smallest Jewish community in America, with a congregation as large and recognized as this one? How do you say goodbye? I'll answer that later. But first, the essential larger context of this night. 19 years ago, when I succeeded our cherished emeritus Rabbi Danziger, there were two clear challenges for this historic congregation and one glaring opportunity. The challenges: first, in the early 1990s, there were as few as 9 students in Temple's high school graduation class, even though Memphis and Temple had significantly more Jewish kids back then. I felt that we had a responsibility to restore a bar mitzvah culture after bar mitzvah that had declined dramatically. Challenge number 2 was the need for a bold and creative response to an overlooked reality. Several of my Jewish peers who are now in their 50s realized back then, in the 90s, that Temple, both numerically and philosophically, would become the barometer for most Memphis Jews and the southern region. Yet, the younger generations just behind us were either not returning to live here or were choosing not to devote themselves to Temple's long-term vitality. So those are the two challenges. The opportunity: music everywhere, not only on the pulpit, but the infusion of Jewish music into every facet and demographic of Temple, from teens performing new contemporary Jewish music to engaging more of our adult talent and creating ruach, from clergy chanting healing prayers at the bedsides of members, to music as the means to reimagining Yom Kippur as a 24-hour spiritual makeover, with the hope that hundreds and hundreds, not just a handful, might be drawn to Temple music and spirituality and want to stay all day. 2 challenges, 1 opportunity. Enter Katie Bauman 17 years ago, not 10, but 17, after graduating from WashU as our full-time intern. This 20-something Jacobs Camp standout not only understood the challenges and opportunity, she was all in making it happen. And not for her own future, but for the future vibrancy of Temple and Southern Judaism. Katie even flew back and forth to Memphis from D.C. in 2003 before marrying a thoughtful and all-around great guy named Adam from one of Temple's most generous and committed and honorable families named Eckstein. I remember Adam Eckstein's bar mitzvah taking place on this bima in July of '93. 14 years later, during his Cincinnati law school years and Katie's rabbinic studies, they married, and the following year, Gracie Ruth was born just before Thanksgiving. A few months after that, Adam, Katie, and baby Gracie came directly back to Memphis, a dream come true in actualizing this 21st century vision for Temple, a dream which continues seamlessly and compellingly with Cantor Abby musically and Rabbis Bess, Jeremy, and Feivel rabbinically, and even more new Jewish professional talent arriving at Temple this summer. But tonight, we celebrate the all of Rabbi Bauman's impact. Katie's pioneering and substantial leadership of Micah, for instance, has only been the past few years. 7 years ago, when a handful of young Jews enjoyed a brief summer internship in Memphis named the TI Fellowship, Katie asked, why not create a year-round organic community for young adults from the ground up who align themselves with our inclusive expression of Judaism? Why not empower today's Jewish 20-somethings to build community for their generation their own way? That's when Rabbi Katie and Kara Greenstein created Connect TI, through which hundreds of Jewish young adults have found a year-round sense of home, thanks especially to Kara's awesome successor, Bailey Less. So Connect TI was born 6 years ago. It was 4 years ago that planning began to reach Jews in Midtown and downtown via Crosstown, and accent that jewel in the Reformed Jewish crown known as Tikkun Olam, social justice. Katie helped me craft that vision too. 9 years ago, the teen team was solidified when Katie took charge. 6 and 7 years ago, Rabbi Bauman elevated the Jewish substance of our stellar Barbara K. Littman Early Learning Center to an even higher level of excellence it now enjoys under Jamie Baer's direction. What about 5 years ago, when there were only 2 temple clergy, just me and Katie, co-leading this entire congregation without a cantor or other rabbis? Oh, then there's 15 years ago when this CD for Temple's 150th anniversary was produced. According to the credits, the producers were me, Rick Recht, and Daryl McClanahan, but Katie was the silent producer. She helped me put it together in my car when we were stuck in a 2003 traffic jam by St. Jude after doing hospital rounds. A few tracks after Katie's opening Dan Nichols song Chazak is Craig Taubman's That's What Love Is All About, sung by a then barely 10-year-old named Kara. Remember, Katie was not even in rabbinical school while helping me and Kenneth Wurzburg with Temple's 150th. Kara Greenstein was in the 4th grade. 7 years later, Katie returns as Kara's teen rabbi. 7 years after that, she becomes her young adult Connect TI rabbi. This is just one example of Rabbi Bauman's influence on Temple intergenerationally for nearly 2 decades. Think about this. It will not be until Katie is older than I am now that she will have been in New Orleans and Truro for as long as she has impacted Memphis and Temple Israel. And that will not be until little Sammy Eckstein is 20 years old, 17 years from now. That's the span of time, without exaggeration tonight, in my mind's eye. Not one moment or year, but the all of the teen song leader I pulled aside to compliment at Jacob's Camp in the 1990s, and who came to us straight from college just after I succeeded Rabbi Danziger. Katie's 2 greatest Memphis achievements, however, occurred 8 years ago during the High Holy Days with the birth of Morris Robert, Adam and Katie's firstborn son, and then 3 years ago next month, the arrival of Sammy Forsyth Eckstein. So Adam and Katie moved here with a baby named Gracie, and they are leaving a city known for basketball with a team of 5. We could not have picked, my friends, we could not have picked a better Torah portion name than this week's Emor, Leviticus 21 through 24. Emor is my wish, hope, prayer for Katie and every colleague with whom I have the privilege of partnering. It's the one word I strive to do myself and which Rabbi Bauman has so ably and eloquently demonstrated. Emor means speak! Exclamation point. Rabbis must never be silent in stirring Jews to right the wrongs the Torah commands us to address, and which we all ignore at our own peril. Ideally, rabbis should exhibit her voice of wisdom in teaching and her voice of principle in sermons. Rabbis should also exhibit Katie's rabbinic voice of comfort at funerals and her voice of tenderness in the hundreds of namings, bar and bat mitzvahs, weddings, and other life cycle ceremonies at which she has officiated. So thank you, Rav Chava Miriam Bat Shoshana V'David, for raising your voice and for exhibiting, as Micah sees it, the qualities of a human being that matter most qualities like compassion, honesty, thoughtfulness, and understanding. Those qualities are never obvious from the outside. They can only be discovered by knowing a person, not just by looking. Back to my opening question. Just how do you say goodbye to the associate rabbi who has served temple in different capacities longer than any in the 165-year history of this congregation? How do I say farewell to someone I've known half my life and who's been key to a 21st century large synagogue still thriving somehow in this very challenging Jewish demographic? How do you say goodbye? The answer is, you don't. Katie and the Bausteins are just down the road, not across the country, thank God. So tonight is not shalom, it's lehitraot, until next time. And of course, the best tribute to Katie's Memphis rabbinate is to continue the vibrancy and vitality of this temple to which she has given so much of her heart, mind, and soul. And next to Katie's immediate family, this rabbi knows that more than anyone. Katie, even as we celebrate your return to the birthplace of your family and your future rabbinic leadership at Truro, it is because of the indelible impact you have made on this temple and city that the thousands who belong here and Memphians throughout our city will always claim you as their rabbi too. Katie, without even counting all our co-officiation from Memphis to Greenville, from Little Rock to the marriage of my daughter to your cousin, without even counting all the joyous and happy blessings we have offered downtown and around town and in front of both temple arcs, it dawned on me that we've never offered a blessing upon each other. So I have a brief prayer for you, for which I would ask the congregation to rise as you join me in front of the open ark. This is the one service that the microphone would go out. My prayer, dear friend, is this. Bruchim anu bevoech. How blessed every member of this holy congregation and the entire Memphis community of faith has been in receiving the Torah you have transmitted from the scrolls in this ark to the Torah emanating from your own heart. How grateful we are tonight for experiencing your voice of conscience and clarity, conviction and community, compassion and love. Brucha at b'tzeitech. Now blessed may you be as you prepare to head south and bring your Torah to every life you touch in New Orleans. May God continue to bless you, Adam, Gracie, Sammy, and Mo with faith sufficient to meet every challenge you face. And finally, Katie, may you draw our strength in knowing that, like God, we who are walking in Memphis are with you always. And let us say,
As I sat down to prepare a few words to speak tonight, I typed and deleted over and over again. It wasn't that my words were untrue, they just fell short of expressing the depths of my humility, sadness, joy, amazement, nostalgia, and above all, gratitude feel so grateful for my family here. Was that me? Daddy and Kathy, Jane, Jean, Sarah. Are you in the room? I think she might be with Sammy. Sarah. My precious children, Gracie, Morris, and Sammy. My partner in rock and inspiration, Adam. I feel so grateful to each of you for your presence in the sanctuary tonight and for this entire congregation and its leaders for your patience and kindness and trust in me over the years of our relationship. At Yom Kippur, we begin with Kol Nidre, a disclaimer that we know we will fail even as we attempt to have a perfect year. So I begin with my own Kol Nidre of sorts. I will fail in the next few minutes to fully cover and explain what I feel, but I will try. I want to try. This week's Torah portion, Parshat Emor, has special meaning for me. When I was graduating from Wash U, finishing my term along with Adam as the Reform Worship Chairs of Hillel, I drashed on Parshat Emor. It was the first time I wore a suit. When I was completing my year in Israel and Jerusalem during rabbinical school, preparing to leave Israel and its holy grit and grind that still lives in my heart, I drashed on Parshat Emor. And tonight, Parshat Emor is the subtext for this moment of transition. And as I studied it again this week, I appreciate it because it helps me to address this moment in two particular ways. The beginning of this Torah portion is an in-depth prescription of the appropriate relationship between a priest and his work. And while the ancient priests are in some ways a precedent for modern-day rabbis, what I find so stirring in these verses is the degree of difference between the life of the priests being described here and my own life, a difference that I cherish. The Torah describes isolation of the priest from the people. How different from the intimate life we share together and the multitude of messy and beautiful interactions we encounter living together in proximity as we do. The parasha specifies that the priest must not have any defects to be able to fill his role. How different from the way I have had to present myself to you, messy with the motherhood that I treasure and the flawed personhood that I possess. And you have shown me so much grace in this regard. Parshat Emor warns the priests to have limited contact with the profane and the people limited contact with the sacred, making only scripted offerings to God. How different from the raw moments of prayer that we have shared, whether in the sanctuary or at a bedside. These opening verses of the Torah portion, so contrary to our shared reality, help me articulate the gift that it has been to serve you in this institution with the gorgeous lack of clarity and abundance of connection that entails. The second way that this parasha helps me engage with this moment is his explanation of our holy times, the portraits of Yom Kippur and Sukkot that appear in these verses, and especially the portrait of the time that we are in now, between Passover and Shavuot, 7 weeks which the Torah instructs us to count. Usfartem lachem mimacharat hashabat miyom viachem et omer hatnufa sheva Shabbatot tmimot tiyena. From the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the great Sabbath of Pesach, you shall count off 7 weeks. This counting of days between Passover and Shavuot, called the counting of the Omer, I think my father will back me up, is most certainly not a Jewish tradition that I observed in my classical Reform family in Little Rock. I think I told you a few weeks ago about the crawfish at my bat mitzvah. As an adult, I have been drawn to this custom. And right now, as I try to tease out the ticking clock of the universe and extract from it a meaningful story of what the last 10 years have meant to me, a tradition of calmly and methodically counting day by day has tremendous appeal. So please consider the following words my counting, my acknowledgement that each year, within which there were so many months and weeks and days and hours and minutes with you, Each year has been a transformative blessing, the result of which is that I am more faithful than I ever thought possible, having been in your glorious presence. 5770, we moved here in the summer of 2009 with beautiful baby Gracie and a sense of hopeful bewilderment we were so lucky, into a neighborhood that has been an extended family for us. 5771, in 2010, I walked my mother through the end of her life, and our kinship and loss brought you and me closer together. 5772, we welcomed precious baby Mo, and again encountered your generosity, and my family marveled even more at Temple Israel's preschool. So grateful for my incredible sister-in-law, Sarah, then starboard teacher Jamie Bear, and the other heroic professionals in our ELC, and the magnitude of their holy labors. Nothing has meant more to me than watching the ELC soar under Jamie's leadership, and I see that continuing. 5773, 2012 and 13 was a time of deep immersion when I began to fully grasp the complexity of this place. You made me an associate rabbi that year and gave me the opportunity to lead organizationally with an incredible group of colleagues, and I learned through B'nai Mitzvah, high school, teen team, and conversion students, Purim Spiel practices, Ruach rehearsals, pastoral visits, and meetings with the worship committee and WRJ and others, that this place is so full of sacred energy. I hope you can feel it as I do. 5774. Cantor John Kaplan, a pivotal presence in my life, and Rabbi Adam Grossman, a loud presence in my life. And also a jovial and imaginative one. I love Adam. Made plans to depart during that year, and I learned that transition can be hard, but it is holy. You showed me that, all of you, through your resilience and creativity as we worked in committees to envision a future that honored this congregation and its mission. This is also the year that Micah became a fixed part of my life, and it has been such a privilege to serve and walk in the footsteps of so many other temple leaders, including Rabbi Harry Danziger, whom I could not admire more. 5775, we were a clergy team of 2, beginning in the summer of 2014, welcoming the birth of Connect TI and relying on a myriad of incredible lay leaders to keep Temple strong, and that is still Temple's way. And this is as inadequate a time as any to express my overwhelming, boundless, ineffable gratitude and affection for Rabbi Micah Greenstein, a force in my life like no other. I think of that year, but really every year since I was 22 years old, as a time when I learned from you, was encouraged by you, saw what was possible through your example, and experienced your generosity. There is more to say, but never enough. 5776, by Rosh Hashanah of 2015, Temple Israel welcomed Bess Wollner and Abby and Fievel Strauss, and it has been such an honor to observe and benefit from your leadership and growth since that time. We have challenged and supported each other, and most days have been filled with excitement and joy, and I am so happy for Temple Israel that they can enjoy your gifts in the future, as well as Jeremy's, who I know will share so much. 5777, 2016 was a year we welcomed our radiant son, Sammy, into the world, and it was a year when I learned that I had been sleeping, oblivious to the degree of hate and injustice in our city and country. But also, thankfully, I was learning. I became aware of the wealth of goodness and courage among us. And that was the year that I woke up. It was then that dear friend and mentor, the Reverend Dr. Roz Nichols, called and asked me to take a leap into a community endeavor that had no name, but intended to harness the collective power of organizations in Memphis to alleviate suffering. We need you to serve, Roz said. And there is no other answer to give when Roz says something like that, but a rousing, okay, if you're sure. It was then that I met my brother, the Reverend Dr. Stacy Spencer, one of the most compelling leaders I will ever know. And in community with an incredible ragtag group of passionate and beautiful people, we had a baby, and we named it Micah, Memphis Interfaith Coalition for Action and Hope. And it has been a profound honor in my life to play a small part in building this organization. Fellow executive team members and TI powerhouses Megan Keel and Sarah First, our Temple Israel board chairs of Micah, Janice Finan, Karen Rubnitz, and now Matt Holland, and the many Temple members who participate in Micah's work inspire me every day. And you, Stacy, and Roz, and the magnificent Reverend Ayanna Watkins, and the rest of our executive team are among my soul's dearest friends. Temple's affiliation with Micah as one of its founding partners is a huge source of pride, and my deepest prayer is that we stay strong in our commitment to this project of systemic change for the sake of equity. Our presence and participation are essential. Thank you, Rabbi Bess, for being Temple's Micah convener in the future. 5778, last year was a year of learning for me about power and what it means for us as a congregation to be here in this most fraught and soulful city and to heed our prophetic imperative. And I have grown every time we have had a hard conversation in my office or in the hallways after a sermon or on the phone or in the grocery store about politics, about justice, about our beloved Israel, about our own biases, about what our Judaism calls us to do. 5779. This is the year that I say goodbye and will see Temple Israel from a distance. Excuse me. I'll pull it together. As a beacon of light and give thanks to God every day that I was fortunate enough to bask within it for 10 and really 18 years of my life. In the process of preparing to move, we are working to tidy and purge our house, which will be for sale soon, by the way. That's all. I'm just kidding. And we are using the KonMari method. Perhaps you're familiar. The way it works is that you hold possessions in your hand, and you consider them, and knowing you cannot keep them all, keep that which sparks joy. As I hold you, Temple Israel and Memphis, in my heart, and reflect on you and on us, this is what sparks joy for me. The music we have sung, the tears when the pain has been great but the love is greater, my failures and the gracious forgiveness you have given me over and over again, the opportunities to speak to you and the gift of being heard, the window into humanity you have offered me even when you haven't even known me, the laughter and questions and bright spirit of all my students, the knowledge, because I have experienced it myself, that people who believe in you can change your life, and the Torah in all the places that it lives, and always, always coming home to a family I cherish who have made all of this possible. I have been so proud to serve you. All of this sparks deep joy, and wherever I go, all of it, and all of you will be with me. Shabbat shalom.